train.
I almost got caught behind it. I was the last.
I
one to
figured 30
go
more
through.
seconds there.
You were probably right behind me
Yeah.
then.
Just closed.
Okay. There's my, okay, we're ready, set. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Somewhere I had to look at this during the meeting. That changes everything. There. So you talk. Yeah, so you have one of those little sneaky things that hears you talk.
It's this one here.
Okay. Oh, the owl, yeah.
Yeah.
We have those in
We
every
have enough.
committee room. And you can't even whisper behind the desk once the sound turns on. It gets you from 50 feet away.
Yeah, that's.
Still hot mic thing.
Couldn't stand. Oh, is this one mine? It is.
We have a packet for Janice.
No packets for Janice. No. There we go.
You want to wait for Lonnie or?
Lonnie is
Oh, he's in the
not,
waiting.
not able. Oh, there are people in the waiting room.
Okay, so no Lonnie.
Would you like a poll? Okay.
All right, well, we have a forum. So at 5:38, call the meeting to order. And Laura will do the roll call, right?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so.
Lonnie Rainbow,
Absent.
Sarah Thompson.
Here.
Mike Baker.
Here.
Doug Mendenhall,
Here.
Michaela Emerson,
Here.
Janice Baker.
Yeah.
Tom Trotter.
Here. Oh, yeah. I guess I'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very nice. All right, move on to item number 4, the consent agenda. Has anybody? I know I have some questions on the previous digital cover consent agenda. I don't know if anybody else noticed anything. There was some language in there. I guess we missed, we lost the recording.
Yes.
Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, so for me, I noticed under the Proterra bankruptcy update, I think. Okay,
It's 9.2.
yeah, item number 9.2. The final second to final paragraph. I had suggested consulting with the legal advisor, but that was in September. I think that's second to final paragraph could be omitted entirely because I believe Doug had brought forth some of the other items in that paragraph and he wasn't here that last meeting, but I'm not sure about the other 3 paragraphs. That's my input. So just to strike the 3rd paragraph.
Well, I can't say if we talked about the first paragraph or not. We did talk about the second paragraph, so we probably summarized the first one.
If there's nothing else, then I guess nobody else has any concerns about the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda
It's amended.
as amended.
As amended.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of approving the item number 4 consent agenda for November 13th?
Aye.
Aye. Sounds like it was unanimous.
Mhm.
Motion carried, motion passes. Move on to item 4.2, October preventive maintenance report.
I think that was part of
That's
it.
part, oh, that's part of it, okay. I'll get the hang of it. Move on to item number 5, financial report. Give it to Sherry.
All right. At this point, we should be using about 34% of our budget, which we are still doing really well. The general fund income is at about 30. received a couple of vans, the old vans. Is that correct, Cheryl? The sale of the asset is a van, so a couple of the old vans from the auction, correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch what.
She was asking what the sale of the asset was.
I'm not sure.
It's $1190. $1,190. I believe that was the auction.
Maybe we did 1200.
I'd have to look at it, but, yeah. It's old.
I thought that was, I apologize, the sale of the assets was in June. But we would have received it in July.
Well, this was just October. I can go. I can look at it.
1190, but that,
Email me later.
Okay.
Just curious.
we did receive some insurance reimbursements.
Mm-mm, it wouldn't be in the sale of the asset though. I'd have to look it up and see.
Not a big deal,
what it
sure.
was. I'll have it for the next time.
To bring your laptop in here.
Yeah. Anybody have any other questions about the?
Just concerned, but I think we've already covered it before, just it's fuel prices. And the preventative or the maintenance, so, because of all the accidents, that's why it's higher.
Oh, the preventive maintenance. Now, the accidents are covered under insurance and we just have it a deductible. Most of them are covered by the other person's insurance because we haven't had that fault.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's just the increase in costs, that's all.
Yeah, the accidents fall under the operations of 1-22-210. So if we get any bills or reimbursements from the insurance, we agree.
Okay, accident repair,
Mhm.
that's really right. All right,
Make a motion to accept the financial report. Approve the financial report.
I can second, right?
You can't.
I'll second the motion to approve the financial reports. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. And any public comment for on agenda items only, item number 6.
Nothing, Jim?
Nothing online?
How about Natasha?
No, she says no. Okay, well, we'll move on to very honored guest, Representative Virgil Osborne.
Hi there, nice to meet everybody. I'm your state representative. So I was asked to come tonight, just maybe give you guys a little update on where the state's going with green energy and new direction. So just a little background, back in December, I got a call from the Speaker of the House and he asked if I would be on the Energy, Environment and Climate Committee. I thought he liked me at that point, but now sometimes I wonder if he did it on purpose. And so since then, I actually got a scholarship to go to a college course on energy. It's called Lead High, and for life of me, I never can remember what that.
Energy Horizon Institute.
Legislative Energy Horizon Institute. And let me back up a second. This is Jen Jasper, my chief of staff, and this is Diana Decker. She is our legislative assistant. And then I have another guy that works for me. He's in Salem right now. But so anyway, part of that was a scholarship paid for by the state. We started the class in Richland, Washington, finished it in Washington, D.C. And it was a real kind of taste of all of the different sources of energy that the state is looking at going to. And when I say that, I'm talking solar, wind, nuclear, hydrogen, and what they're going to get rid of in the fossil fuel industry, which affects what you guys do, of course. The direction of the state, and there's already been some legislation passed on this, is to wean the state off of fossil fuel energy. I will tell you that, interestingly enough, during the course of this class, while we were in Washington, D.C., some of the experts, and I mean, there were people from every state, representatives from every state in the union, plus there were representatives from France and Canada. And when they came out with the projections on what was actually going to happen with fossil fuels in the United States, in the year 2050, there were still 54% fossil fuel use, right? Now, Oregon will tell you that by the year 2050, it will be 0.
Right.
But the rest of the world, I guess the common sense part of the rest of the world says that's an impossible feat, right? Now, I wouldn't call it a mandate, but our legislation right now, and unfortunately it's controlled by the majority party, is to get rid of all fossil fuels, and we just eliminated a coal plant, and I think we have one more natural gas fired plant that in the state that actually produces power, and they're in the process of weaning that away too and getting rid of it. I question the fact that why would we get rid of everything if we don't have anything to replace it by? Now, in 2035, they start fining you for not having got to that 80% mark. In 2050, it's a big fine if you haven't got to that 100% mark, right? So what does that look like? There's lots of things to consider. Number one, probably in this state, one of the most important things is we finance our road systems with gas tax. Well, electric cars don't use gas. So if we actually do make that switch right now, the state's trying to figure out, well, how do we make up those funds that we're going to lose? Well, they're talking about tolling, and I'm sure if you followed anything that's going on in Salem right now, they're really, really wanting to toll Interstate 205 that goes up past the airport into Washington. And I'm not talking about $2.50 tolls. I'm talking about maybe $2.50 for axle tolls. Most likely it's going to cost you $20 or $12 to $15 to go one way. And you're going to pay the same coming back when you go back, So fortunately, that didn't sit well with the majority party. And that bill got shot down in the long session, but I would imagine we'll see more of that in the future. When it comes to public transportation, I mean, they've already, Eugene's already doing it. They've switched off of a lot of what they've done is off of diesel and they're onto electric. What's interestingly enough about that, I happen to know the guy that's in charge of maintenance in Eugene's public transit system. And those electric buses have cost that so much more money because of the maintenance issues and the downtime, frankly, that they've had. So I think what you're going to see here is you're going to see the pressure start to get rural Oregon to get on board with what's happening in Multnomah County and Washington County and everywhere else. I don't see that as a reality because I don't see an electric bus running the routes you guys run. Now, I don't know all your routes, but I'm assuming you go all the way to Myrtle Creek and probably Canyonville. I don't know where all you go. It takes a lot of juice to do that.
It does.
It's got to be dependable juice, especially in the wintertime when you're parked in the snow. So I will tell you that having sitting on that committee, I get it. And from Southern Oregon and rural Oregon, not just here, but Eastern Oregon, all of Southern Oregon, I think we all understand that the electric car use is probably something that is going to be very difficult for us to adopt. Not just electric cars, electric tractors, electric trucks, electric everything. So I think I'm hoping that the shift is the hybrid, right? That works, but it is not considered green energy. So that would only be good to 2050. And as you know, the mandate for the state is they're going to stop even selling gas-powered vehicles by 2035 is when they're not here. Maybe it's 2025. Not even going to have the availability to buy a new vehicle in the state, which also creates a problem with gas stations going away. And that has to be backfilled with electric charging systems. And it takes a lot of juice to charge a bus. I mean, literally, like I've heard it was like as much as 1,500 homes would take in a day to charge an electric bus. So, I mean, that's kind of a nutshell where they're headed. We have bigger problems beyond just what happens there. We have problems with what are we going to replace the what's called the base load. Okay, the base load is what happens when you're producing hydroelectric, the dams. Bonneville Power Administration is responsible for about 65% of all of our juice down here. Green energy is not encompassing hydroelectricity, if you can believe that. They do not consider that green energy. I don't know why. I've argued that to nauseum, but the fact is, and I guess it's because they think it kills fish. I don't know. But it is one of those things that they're not looking to expand. But that's a base load producer in the state, which means anytime day or night you come and flip your light switches on and your lights come on. Doesn't matter what the weather is, unless obviously you have a major, failure somewhere. Another base load was fossil fuels and that would also could take into consideration natural gas. So natural gas to go away. That's a base load producer. They want to replace it with solar and they want to replace it with wind, which are great alternatives to those. but not great for use. At nighttime, the sun doesn't shine, and when the wind's not blowing, you don't have power. So your base load, they only have so much available storage to be able to utilize those green energy platforms. They make DC electricity, they don't make AC electricity. When you see the lights come on in your house, that's AC. So it has to be converted. We're right now dealing with a lot of stuff, and I'm talking too much. If I go too
Oh, no,
long,
you're
just tell me.
fine.
We're right now dealing with a lot of stuff regarding the offshore wind program that they would like to start. Some people are okay with it. I just had a public hearing on it in Salem, and I didn't realize that those wind towers are 530 feet across the actual propellers, I guess you call it. The wind, the body of the thing can be anchored in up to 3,000 feet of water, and it floats 100 feet down. I don't remember exactly what. I think they float 100 feet underwater for stability, and they're wide. Well, I asked the question in committee. I said, so you're telling us these things have to be anchored in no more than 3,000 feet of water. I said, but the average depth of the water off the Oregon coast is 9,000 feet. So I said, what happens when you go over 3,000? Well, they can't do it. I don't know why this doesn't work, probably because there's too much, up and down. The fact is those wind towers are going to end up being on the horizon. So I don't know if anybody's been to Las Vegas lately, but have you seen the high roller? It's 550 feet.
Not to mention the problem that they're having with them killing the whales out there.
Well, yeah, that's coming
I
too.
don't like that.
So there's a visual impact, there's an environmental impact, and then there's the transmission lines. The transmission lines are really the big problem that nobody's really been able to figure out. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with there was a big fight on a natural gas pipeline just recently that wanted to go, over to the coast and out, and that got shot down. That's nothing compared to the transmission lines that are gonna have to go in, and they're gonna go above ground, right? But you can't just bring in electricity to Coos Bay and say, well, we're gonna have it in, Roseburg and wherever else without bringing in those transmission lines. Not only is it expensive, it's going on power lines. And what happens when storms happen and trees fall across power lines, right? So there's just so much going on in the state, and not a lot is being considered. I'll just say it, you have a majority party that is demanding we go green energy. And they're demanding the climate, is increasing in temperature. Whether you believe in that or not, it doesn't really matter in my opinion, but that movement is going to be filled in with all kinds of problems that nobody realized were going to happen. So, I mean, those are just some of the things we're going to deal with. And that's, as far as this committee goes, you're going to have to start making the transition to either, some other alternative source. Hydrogen seems to be where they're going with the big vehicles, the big trucks, because hydrogen can charge the batteries. That's really, people say, well, hydrogen is hydrogen powered. No, it's not really hydrogen powered. It's still electric, but the hydrogen is what actually powers the electricity that makes it. So I don't see how they can't go that way. And that's probably where you're going to head, which also creates other problems. If you remember the Hindenburg, that was a hydrogen airship. So
I just had a meeting a couple hours ago with Pacific Power, and they were talking about some of this stuff in the wind energy, and didn't sound like that was gonna really pencil out because power is so cheap in Oregon, comparatively speaking to wind energy from wave action energy.
yeah.
I know they're looking at small nuclear.
No, I was gonna get to that too. So to replace all of the power that happens in Oregon right now, we had a hearing on that during the long session. I asked them in the meeting, I said, so let's assume we took away all other energy forms. How many small nuclear reactors would it take to supply the state of Oregon? And the number was 57, I think, is what they responded back to me. They didn't know.
It's new technology. It's not your old
That's right.
nuclear reactor, right? He said, if you got rid of all just the coal fired plants,
Yeah,
we'd be asking everybody to try to basically be at rolling blackouts.
that's exactly right.
There's not enough power to just the demand today.
Yeah.
That's what it would take.
Well, interestingly enough, I was all about it when they put the smart meters into all of our homes, because they don't have to actually come to your house to read the meter. Well, guess what a smart meter does? It tracks your usage during peak hours. And guess what's happening in California? They charge you more money when you're using electricity during peak hours, because that's what they've decided to do. So that's coming to a house near you.
Yeah.
But it's the small nuclear reactor. First off, in the state of Oregon, we passed a law I don't know, 20 years ago that said we won't do any nuclear development, so we haven't since Trojan and all that stuff went away. There is movement in 25 session, I think, to try to undo that, to at least make it where we could, because OSU is already studying, they were instrumental in creating these small nuclear power plants. They are small, but they still take 20 acres to do, right? And in France, they actually have them in action, and Canada's putting in, I think, 2 that are gonna come online, I think, within the next 5 years. They actually have a way to recycle the rods that power these things. And they're doing it overseas, but it's too expensive for us to do. So that's, at least that's where they're at right now. That program may develop into, that. So there's a danger, but not as much as it used to be, 50 years ago.
Well, that's why they're cutting everything, because if everything can get more expensive, everything will get wasted.
Yeah, well, nuclear is a great way to make the base load come back.
Yeah.
And it would stop the rolling blackouts, but, again, going back to the grid system, I mean, even or pick Roseburg, we don't have the capacity in this city to everybody in the city to plug their cars in at their house. The grid, it would fail. That doesn't count buses and trucks and everything else. So, there's a lot to do to get us to that point, and I'm just not sure it's attainable. But I think a lot of that'll be determined in 24 and a federal level, depending on who's elected. Because some of that might go away, but we'll have to wait and see. So anyway.
Otherwise, it would take a major transition in state governance or a major failure to convince people that it's not worth it, or else people get put out in the dark.
The problem in Oregon is the same problem in California and other states too, is the majority of the population, which would control the majority party, isn't rural. So, I can already tell you that in rural Oregon, your electric bill, if you're paying $200 a month or, wintertime, maybe $300 a month, you're gonna be paying double that, right? Now, PUC is gonna control that, so it's not gonna happen all at one time, but somebody has to pay that bill. And,
Electric rates go up another 15%, they said in January.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe
15%.
I need to find somebody down here that's willing to drive an electric dump truck. I'm just gonna say. it.
Well, we just passed a grant for, I don't remember what city it was, for an electric garbage truck.
Really?
Yeah, and the problem is, I don't think it was, I think it was Roseburg, but
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
it was Roseburg, yeah, but they only did
But yeah, I think he was telling me that they did prototype one up here.
but it has an 80-mile range.
Yeah.
So, and that's assuming everything's great and it's flat and it's a nice
Right.
warm day. I will tell you that electric cars don't work well on cold days. The batteries don't like cold. My hybrid that I drive doesn't like it on cold days. The mileage goes like, I lose like 4 or 5 miles a gallon on cold days. I didn't know, but I found out. So interesting. So,
Very interesting.
yeah,
It's all good things. We have kind of decided to diversify, not put all our eggs in one basket and really look at the R99 renewable diesel. Because it burns so much cleaner and we could keep our existing fleet for now. We've transitioned to 6 of our vehicles to hybrid. We have 3 electric that are on order, but part of our plan is to build the station that generates the hydrogen. So that we can not only fuel our own vehicles, but then fuel access to other folks that could then, we can use that money as match money for our grants.
fantastic.
So
I think
Yeah.
diversity is the right answer.
it has to be, yeah.
Elimination of people's way of life, I don't like. And not all of us are necessarily affected by it. If you're pretty well off, or you don't care if your price of your electricity goes up, but if you're barely making ends meet and all of a sudden now your electricity bill just went up $150 a month, you might not eat,
Exactly.
and you can't always look to the state for the money to fix that, even though they're the ones that are putting the pressure on it to happen. But yeah, so anyway. But besides all that, we're dealing with Measure 110 right now. That seems to be the topic of every meeting I'm in, and even all day today. This is my 4th meeting today. So not that we're talking about it. We just got back from legislative days, and that was pretty much on everybody's mind.
Does it look like it's gonna be repealed?
Well,
I saw amended was an option. I hope it's repealed.
I think that, okay, so, and in a roundabout way, Measure 110 does affect y'all, because people that are drug addicted usually don't own a car because you can't afford it. your buses, and they're the ones that are gonna probably do the crime, or, anyway. A full repeal is what we'd like to see, but it can't be a full repeal without replacement. Something has to happen. I can tell you, our party is asking for that. We have a schedule. Our caucus has gotten together on this many times, and we have a schedule of what we'd like to see. So repeal, we wanna make drugs illegal again. That's part of it, right? And then we want to force reform, right? So you can be arrested and you go to jail and you have a choice. You can go to drug court and go to rehab, or you can go to prison. That is what's missing now. And because that's gone, there's no reason to go and rehab yourself, because nobody's forcing you to do it.
Are we gonna fund rehab though?
Well, that's
Mental health
what's
and some
happening
of
right
that?
now, is that money that's coming from the marijuana fund, the marijuana tax, is not being spent for rehab, nor is it being spent for prevention. And the message should be prevention and rehab, right? I mean, that should be important. That's what the intention was, but it just never happened. So rehab requires counties to build facilities. State needs to pay for that. I mean, if they're gonna make drugs legal, then they need to, but the state's not doing that. So the Senate kind of let it out of the bag a little early. We had a plan. The problem is that our plan, we were gonna force a emergency session to try to get our plan done. And if it didn't happen, it doesn't look good on your campaign trail when you voted to continue with the drug use and the ridiculousness. So that was kind of our whip, right? Well, Senate let it out of the bag a little bit too early. That happened, Friday? Yeah. And so now I don't know what the governor's gonna do. It's her discretion. She allows us to have a special session. I doubt it.
Are you referring it back to the voters, or is it from the legislature?
That's the problem. If we don't do something about it, then it will go back on the ballot, because I already know Max Williams, they're gonna push it on the ballot. And that'll just be a full repeal.
Mhm.
If we have a full repeal without fixing anything, we're gonna be in worse shape than we are now. We're gonna have, until it gets fixed, we'll have, 3 or 4 or 5 years of just chaos. And that's
Feels like that's what we have now.
well, it is, yeah, but I just don't wanna see that. It's such a complicated, it seems easy, right? It seems like, well, just 110 is horrible, it's the cause of everything evil is because of 110. Well, the fact is, there's a whole lot of good that 110 should have done. The money is there to do it, and the structure was there to do it. It just, nobody forced the structure. Nobody did follow through on it, and the message to the voters was absolutely incorrect. Right, and so, I mean, it passed by 65 or 68%.
It's crazy.
I'll bet it wouldn't next time.
No, I bet you'd be the
The
opposite.
language is extremely confusing. I've seen a lot of feedback on that.
And we're the laughing stock of the nation.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, so anyway, I'm all for a repeal. We just have to replace it, though. We can't just say, we can't go back to where we were, because that doesn't fix the problem. Plus, you have all the marijuana tax that, are we just gonna give that to whoever wants it? I mean, that's a lot of money. So that money needs to be spent where it should have been spent, and it just hasn't been. And that's the fault of your legislature. And I'm gonna tell you, I've only been there for a year, so I'm not gonna take the heat. If we don't fix it, I'll be part of the heat, I guess. So, yeah.
Well, making them take a choice of drug court or prison, that is something that is effective.
Yes.
I know more than a handful of people that was their choice, and they're clean now and have been for years.
Yes.
So without that choice, they would probably be a number, one of the OD deaths that we read about on the scanner page.
Well, and there's a lot of side effects of this disaster that we call 110, and some of it's homelessness.
Mhm.
I don't think you can lay the entire blame on 110 for homelessness, but the fact is,
Ninth Circus.
what's that?
That's the Ninth Circus.
Yeah,
Circuit.
yeah, for sure. I mean, once you start down that path, right, you can't work, or you're not gonna work, and you're gonna become homeless. Now there's other issues in Oregon. I mean, we're way behind on our building housing, right?
Yes.
I mean, governor wants 36,000 houses built in 24. We've been building about half that. So she also ran legislation that I did not vote for, because it did not do anything for Southern Oregon, for rural Oregon. $200 million, $220 million, I think was what the total ended up being. But for homeless problem, which basically addressed Multnomah County, Washington County, maybe even Lane County. But the 26 rural counties in Oregon got $1 million each. And none of that money could be used for a new project. Or I'm sorry, for an existing project, only could be used for something new. So, I mean, we have, the Navigation Center, Sutherland has Hastings Village, we have these projects that could use those funds, couldn't use them on that. So I voted no. So I took some heat for that because people think, well, you didn't want to help the homeless. No, that's not true. I want to help the homeless. We need to first address the problem, why they're homeless. Secondly, we need to take care of all of Oregon, not just Portland. Now they have a mission, they're trying to fix Portland. Good luck.
They did it to themselves.
They did it absolutely to themselves. You can literally walk down the street in Portland with a heroin needle in your arm. You're not gonna go to prison or jail or probably even be talked to, but if you're drinking a beer walking down the same street, you probably end up in the back of a patrol car. I mean,
That's insane.
that is the definition of insane, yes.
We drove through there to the airport and I didn't even recognize Portland.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't recognize it. I was like, what is this place?
I can tell you, we're gonna do our damnedest not to let that happen here. And they're gonna have to go through me to get there, that's for sure. I don't have a problem
But
fighting.
rent is as much as owning a house and you're paying the same amount.
Yeah.
People can't buy a house because they don't have any credit. And they can't rent because they don't have any credit.
Right.
And there's all these other hoops you have to jump through now, because when I was a kid, you could rent a place.
Yeah.
And there's no problem, but now nobody trusts anybody to rent to, and so now they look at you and your dog and everything else in your life, and they with a fine tooth comb, and people like, my kid couldn't find a place to live, we ended up having to help her buy a house.
Yeah.
Because we had no choice, and that's a big burden on our family. It's just all these problems just everybody's dealing with.
Yeah.
Just to get somebody into a home, and then we've got all these homeless people that are imported.
Have that discussion with Chief Police
Came
today.
by our river and polluting it, we just finally threw them out of the duck pond,
Yeah,
this polluted.
who knew that the Greyhound bus station only comes into town, it doesn't take you out of town?
So we don't have
I didn't know
one
that.
anymore.
Did you know that?
You have to buy your ticket online,
Yeah, well, if you're
We don't
homeless.
even have a Greyhound
right?
bus.
Exactly.
We don't even have a stop anymore, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, they will drop you off, where they stop?
Used to be over by the old Rite Aid and
Right,
Safeway,
Yeah.
that's where they drop them off.
but I think they stopped doing that in this last summer.
It's been started up
They're
again.
Did it start again?
They're still doing it, yeah. So I was at another.
I
Jennifer.
I just drove past literally right now, and they're dropping people off as I speak.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that, and again, today I was in a meeting with the chief of police with Kaufman, and I asked him, I said, so, when I was a kid, I grew up here, right? I said, when I was a kid, we didn't have a homeless issue, we really didn't. Well, we had drugs, we had heroin, we had all that stuff. I said, where are they coming from? And it's all over, right? I mean, because obviously the police have a lot of contact with them, they go to camps and there's different things they talk to them about, and my fear is, and I told them this, I said, I like the idea of building an area for them to camp or whatever, but I don't want to make Roseburg a destination for them.
Yes.
And that is the real problem with, Eugene has become a destination for homeless. And, they come from all around.
Well, they hear they didn't get away with stuff.
I kind of like what, it's on a small scale, but what Bernie Woodward did with his Elk Island, he created you can see it right below the bridge there. A little nice, neat little camp. There's a porta potty. It's kept clean.
Yeah.
But it's not that he gave them something. It's the piece I really like about it is that they have to earn it. And so, they have to do a few hours of work, just a little bit, but they gain some self-respect.
Yeah.
And that's the piece, is building that self-respect back up and keeping, having a clean, safe space.
Currently I stopped in Grants Pass and Roseburg and Southern.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, that's
But that's the piece I like, is the
Yeah.
building of the self-esteem and
Yeah.
that's the
and not
solution
just a handout.
to homelessness, is to bring people back into society.
Yeah.
To bring them back in. I mean, there's people I'm not gonna say who, but there's people here that have been homeless, that have brought themselves back into society. Because that's
Yeah.
what they wanted, but they were given an opportunity and they took it.
Well, and I
Yeah.
have the flip side of that too, and there's people out there that don't want to come back in.
There are-
That's exactly what you said.
There are
Yeah.
plenty of those
They don't
too.
want this.
But we can't put that blanket on everyone.
No, and we're not an evil society, right? And we don't hate the homeless. We just want them to succeed like everybody else. That's our goal in life is every, you know, it would be a perfect world if everybody was, you know, able to have an opportunity to succeed and chose that path. But you're right. In fact, the chief today said, because, you know, there's a large percentage of people that don't want to go to one of those places. They don't want to go to Hastings Village or to Bernie's place. They want to be left alone.
There's a percentage. I don't know if it's, I was a board chair for a homeless, group here in town and, for years and, you know, I mean, a lot of it is, you know, there's some drug abuse. There's a lot of abuse, that happens between spouses and, you know, they're just trying to get out and they've got no money and no place to go. There's kids and things that are just abandoned. And so, you know, I mean, a lot of it is just economic circumstances. Now, I just said, you can't afford a place, so you can't get into anywhere to rent.
Oh, yeah, I mean, just to get with one of the rental management companies, you have to
Nobody's
pay.
giving anybody an opportunity, and, you know, I've helped some people that are homeless to get back on their feet and I just thought, you know, one person just helped one other person who's homeless, we wouldn't have any homeless people. There would only be people that want to be there. So those people, I mean, it would take everyone's ability to help someone else. And that's the problem, that people don't wanna go that far, because these people have major problems.
You have to have rules and you have to have laws,
Yes,
even if they don't want to obey. I don't want to obey everything either, but we're a society that we live as a society based on rules of law.
Something changed in this state, and created the problem we have, right?
Yeah.
And I would argue that, we've always had drugs. We've, you know, it used to be marijuana. We've always had drug issues here. But now, because we legalized it, it's created this whole different culture and different way of living. And, you know, why would I want to work when I could go steal it from your garage when you're
that started in our schools, with our teachers, teaching kids, and it happened to my kid, standing up there in front of this classroom saying, marijuana is okay. Drug, you know, and so it's not a gateway drug, it's saying all these things about drugs in front of my kid in a high school. And what's the
reduction in mental health issues too.
Yeah.
Close to the state
There's a
hospital.
lot of factors that contribute to our problem, and you're right, that was something we discussed today as well. But you know, the state has to take the lead on this, right? Our governor needs to take the lead on it. Governor Brown didn't do, in my opinion, Governor Brown did a horrible job with and helped get us where we're at. So far, Governor Kotek has, I mean, I met with her a few times. I'm not gonna tell you she's doing a horrible job. She's addressing real problems. We'll see how she follows through on it, right?
In my mind, you can't fix it without dealing with addiction.
Yeah.
And mental health.
Well, there's another cause that, you know, particularly with the housing and stuff that maybe isn't that well known. But, you know, the homeless is they're run off, right? They're cited by the police. You see, they wrote a citation. Well, they don't have the money typically to pay the citation. So the citation goes to court, it goes on the records, they're fine. They've got all this back stuff there, which makes it hard when there's background checks to get a place to live or for a job or things like that. They can't pass them because they've got all this stuff that's now been put on them. Whether they deserve it or not, you know, I mean, it's still a problem that they have to overcome.
Once you're in the system, it's hard to get out.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with felons not being able to get a job.
Yeah.
How better to encourage the activity you were arrested for than to tell you now you can't have a job, so you're forced back into it.
Yeah.
See, I agree with that, but it depends on the felony that you.
I
Some
understand.
people just need to
I
stay
know
on.
Trump passed,
Yeah.
passed something that helps with that. I remember him signing that to help people move from being a felon and finding work and stuff.
We're
So-
about this close to felons being able to vote in the state. I have a real problem with that.
Yeah. That probably not the best example I could use.
But anyway, let's go back to the transportation. I managed to get you guys completely off into the weeds. I didn't mean to. But on a transportation basis, I'm not familiar with how you guys are funded. I know some of it, but I don't know much about it, 'cause I'm obviously not part of the board. But I hope that the state can help you make the transitions that you need to do. I certainly am always available. You guys can call me anytime. If you don't have my phone number, it's on every bathroom wall. No, I'm sorry. I am probably the easiest guy you'll ever try to get a hold of. Just Google my name, and I even have my own Wikipedia site now. Who knew, right? So, yeah, whatever I can do to help. If there's grants that you guys need to pursue, aside from the normal grants you do, I'm always happy to help with that too. I'm glad to see some folks I know on the board. I think that's a good thing. And if there's any questions that I can answer, and I have staff, so some questions I can't answer, but they're really good at finding that information. We can dig through a lot of it, so, yeah.
What are the committees are you on?
So I have business and labor, which is a joy, let me tell you. And I have economic development, small business, and of course the climate and energy committee. So, yeah, I own a small business, so I think they felt like that was gonna be a good fit, and it's interesting. Business and labor, I'm not a union guy, sorry, I'm not a union fan. And that committee just runs on union. I mean, that's what it's about. Everything we do has to do with the union. I was in the union when I worked for RFP for a while, and the union has its merits. I think it had a lot of merits in the 50s, and maybe even the 60s. I'm thinking now it's not so much, but right now, how do I say this without offending anybody? What do you call it? LGBTQ XYZ, whatever. That's the topic of every committee meeting we have. Every time, it's like they want to serve what they call underserved, and or the minorities or whatever. And I'm going, I struggle with it because in my opinion, we should, and I've said this, and I have no problem speaking it, we should make laws that are good for the people in Oregon, not one class of people in Oregon.
Correct.
And that committee is, 6-5 Democrat. And of course, because the majority party is Democrat, they hold all the chairs for all the committees, and even though we have some of the vice chairs.
Well, they run on the assumption that minorities are incapable.
That is exactly right.
So, which is racist.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I think it is racist.
Lots of friends that are perfectly capable. My lawyer is black and he's very capable. So I hate that sort of thing. This is just this secret racism thing that they don't even know that they're doing.
Ask me what my pronouns are sometime. I struggle with that. And there's been some bills that got through committee. There was one bill, I'm trying to remember exactly what it entailed, who to report to, but it had to do with the OHSU and reporting. That was a job related bill. So you would have to report what your nationality is, right? They could ask you that and your race and all this stuff. And I'm going, and I won't name names, but some of my colleagues on the committee, and I just completely disagreed with it. And one of my colleagues was minority, and we had a serious discussion about, I don't want the government to know anything about me except what they need to know, period. And they know my name, they know where I live, they don't need to know anything else.
I took a survey like that last week, was it last week?
Yeah.
And came through, I work for the state.
Yeah.
Came through there and filled it out, and I was actually kind of offended by it.
Yeah.
And,
Me too.
and I sat there and I don't remember if I answered all of it, and I was kind of just mad. And I think I told Jess I slept on it, and the next morning I was just whatever, so I sent him off an email. I normally don't respond to stuff, but it was I don't know, had all these equity kind of weird stuff. They want to know all these personal stuff. It's like, you don't need to know any of this, has nothing to do. I can't remember the topic, but it had nothing to do with the rest of it. And
We have to go through.
just the way they asked some of it was really frustrating.
We have to go through 8 hours of that.
It was offensive.
Yeah, well, you did too. I don't know, 8 hours, but it was most of the day. Poor Diana just now is getting a dose of it. I mean, so you have to-
2 hours.
Yeah, to be a state employee, and
You'll get that time.
I asked them,
2 hours drive, 2 hours sit, 2 hours drive. I was like, oh boy.
I had Jen send an email to him and say, what's my consequences if I don't do it? You're gonna fire me? don't think well, yeah, then we got the response, well, you can do it from home. Like, can't tell me I can't.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm pretty sure that I don't have any bosses in Salem, they're all right here. That's how it should
Yeah.
be. So, anyway, I don't want to take up your whole meeting, but this is a very enjoyable conversation and
Very good.
always.
Thank you so much for
Yeah,
coming.
thank you.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes, you bet. I'll keep pulling for you guys, so whatever I can do.
And he means it when he says that he's accessible, so if you
Yeah.
guys have questions, like.
Be
he's-
careful, you might get on my list, and if you're on my text list, then I might ask you questions during session. Michaela made the list, so.
Yes.
I mean, we come across bills sometimes, I mean, you know, there was I think it was a marijuana bill, the tax increase on marijuana, did I hit you up on that?
No, it was a different
That
one.
might have been the sheriff I got on that one, but it's like, you know, it was a proposed increase in Ontario to raise so marijuana has a limit on how much can be taxed, 7% in the state. But within the cities, they can change that limit, and they wanted to change it up to 10% because what's happening with marijuana in Ontario, people are coming from Idaho and buying the marijuana because it's not legal in Idaho. And the crime, everything else that happens associated with that, Ontario can't afford to pay for. So they want to raise the rate on the marijuana tax to 10%. And I'm an anti-tax guy, right? So I'm like, but then I'm not necessarily a marijuana fan either. So
Oh, you did hit me up.
I think I did. Yeah, I hit about 20
You're right.
people from local people here to ask questions, right?
Mhm.
And even the sheriff and all three commissioners and Michaela and the list that goes on. It was interesting to hear the responses because the fact is, you guys put me in that position to vote the way you wanted me to vote. And I'm the only guy in this district that can push the red button or the green button. And so I wanted to hear from everybody. And actually, what it ended up being was marijuana is a legal business in Oregon. And why would we impose a penalty on a legal business in Oregon?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I did not vote for the tax. So it ended up crashing anyway. But I mean, I didn't pass the marijuana bill. I didn't pass the marijuana legal, but the fact is it is legal. So, I own a business. If somebody decided that they didn't like me and they wanted to tax me because my business sells off-road parts, I wouldn't be for that. But
Okay.
the marijuana industry is kind of crashing down on itself right now anyway, because of that's a whole nother topic, but so, yeah, anyway. Like I said, be careful, you might get on my list. You don't have to respond. So,
I'll send you a link to a website that gives you a whole bunch of information about transit in Oregon.
that'd be awesome.
So it'll be at your fingertips.
So I think in Salem, Shelley Bossart is our rep that we have a committee, transportation committee. I'm not on it. In fact, all the committees that I wanted to be on, I didn't get any of them. So that wasn't one of them, but I didn't get any of them, so that's fine. But we still vote for it, right? So I mean,
Right.
it's still, if you don't know how, I'm sure probably everybody here understands how bills go through the House, right? So, if it gets out of committee, then it ends up on the House floor. If it's voted, then it goes to if we vote yes, it goes to the Senate. Senate has to vote yes, but sometimes it goes back into their committees too. In fact, most of the time it does. And then they discuss it over there. If they vote yes, it comes back to us for concurrence, and then it goes to the governor. So to get a bill through the House, I got one through this year. It's pretty difficult, and we've heard 3,000 bills. So, thank God, a lot of them died. And when the Senate walked out and stopped everything that was going on, a lot of good came out of that. A lot of bad is a consequence because of, potentially our senators can't run again, but there was a lot of good that came out of that stoppage of work. And I hope we don't ever have to do that again, but somebody had to call it.
They have a super majority though, don't they?
No, they don't,
Not anymore.
but they could have again. We'll see how 24 goes. They have the majority, but it's simple majority. A tax bill takes 2/3 majority, right? So you can't, we only have one tax bill come up. And I heard people call people rhinos, right? So I know the definition of rhino because they both voted for that tax bill, and I was like, I tried to stop the session. I was so mad. It wasn't a big deal. It was a cell phone tax. We all pay it. It's not a huge tax, probably not even noticeable to most, but it's still a tax. And I just wasn't for taxing, and as were most of my colleagues, but a couple of them decided they were okay with it, and they got stuff for it. And I don't work that way. And you may not get any money in Douglas County, but you're not gonna get any blood money here, not from me. So it's like, I don't work that way. But anyway,
Thank you for that.
We appreciate that.
Mhm.
yeah, it's politics is a tough, very tough job, you know, and anybody that thinks it's easy, it's not.
We need them to slow read every bill, seriously.
Or just read every bill.
Well, exactly. That's the problem. There's too many going through,
Mhm.
Oh,
just like California.
If you could actually sit in on some of our caucus meetings, which obviously are closed, but you would be amazed.
Mhm.
I mean, it is a tough job, you know, and there's only 25 of us in the House, but trying to convince all 25 to vote the same way, right? I mean, because every district has its concerns, right? And you know, mine's solidly conservative, and I vote pretty solidly conservative. Every once in a while, I'll give them I'll toss, you know, like the doggone that freaking bill for the styrofoam containers at restaurants. I went ahead and voted yes on it, and I suffered for that because my own policy guy called me a granola. I'm like, really? So whatever. But you know, I think it's fine to go to cardboard, and it doesn't bother me. So anyway, but I argued it in committee. They said some things I didn't agree with, but ultimately, Senator Solomon.
They could create more job opportunities to produce cardboard containers from our forestry.
You know, here's the thing, if you've never had an opportunity to sit in on a committee meeting, you don't have to go to Salem, you can watch it on, everything is online. I listened to these guys tell me how many millions of pounds of styrofoam they had just collected off the beach this year, or that year, and yeah, it was 23. Containers and all, you know, and it was a lot, it was like, I don't remember the number, like say 130 tons off of Oregon beaches. I had just got back from, because we do a beach cleanup, right? Our off-road clubs do that every year. And I'm like, I'll bet in however many miles, 20 miles of beach that we actually do the cleanup on, I'll bet we didn't collect 2 garbage sacks full of styrofoam, right? So.
Well, I appreciate the wood products industry, but I want my plastic straw back.
Yeah. Exactly. And so when I told him that, you know, I'll call him out. I'm like, cause you know, I can do that. That's what I do. I said, I want to see where you got your facts. They couldn't come up with it. It's just something they pulled up and decided, oh yeah, it's just like anchoring a wind generator in 3,000 feet of water. Well, the fact is they don't want to tell you the truth. They want to tell you, you know, what they want you to hear. And anyway, but it was a good bill.
I questioned the facts regarding the actual greenness of a lot of the, what they call green stuff, you know, because like with R99 diesel, a lot of that comes from vegetables of different types like corn or soybeans and things. And you powering that with diesel tractors and you're trucking from the Midwest. I mean, that's a massive energy investment, plus the fertilizers are synthetic from natural gas and stuff.
Yeah.
So how is that more efficient than just transporting diesel? But you know, diesel prices do fluctuate quite a bit.
I mean, we can go all the way to the root of it.
But then they don't have that sort of information though. If you go look on any websites,
No.
it's like, oh, this stuff's good.
They
It's
want
energy efficient. Like, well, what's the actual, like break it down with like a, you know, accounting type of sheet and look at. counting all these costs.
Goes into a battery?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not a big fan of a lot of that sort of stuff. I mean, I'm not against electric vehicles, but I'm not really a big fan of battery powered vehicles.
Right.
Like you could do overhead electric buses, but that's not, anyway.
I mean, let's talk about shopping at Walmart for a second.
Yeah.
How do you think that product gets there from China on a freighter? A lot of freighters.
Those are fairly efficient as far as transportation of goods though.
Well, how much diesel does it take to get from China to on a freighter? You know what I'm saying? I mean,
It's not as efficient as a clipper should.
no. And I'm sure I actually saw something online, I don't know if it was real or not, about putting sales on freighters. You know,
Yeah, Danish are doing that.
Yeah. But I mean, there's just so many, you know, we had a hearing, and again, I don't want to waste too much of your time, but we had a hearing during the long session where a company wanted to make, I think, biodiesel actually, with forest waste, right? There's it wasn't all biodiesel, it was basically a power plant, right? Great idea. I mean, but here's the problem. You're gonna take a diesel powered cat and a yarder, maybe a shovel, and you're gonna go out into these units that you just logged, and you're gonna scrape the ground, which is also a problem for most environmental issues. And then you're gonna have this big pile of debris that you're gonna run through a machine that's gonna be in Southern Oregon, it's gonna be 50 miles outside of the city that it would serve. So there's no way to get the power, no transmission ability to get it there. Now, in Eastern Oregon, where it's flat and they do a pine forest, maybe there's some sense to that. Maybe they can tap in, but they didn't want to talk about the amount of diesel that it would take to actually do the work that they're talking about doing. It's a wash, doesn't make any sense, and it's already been tried anyway. I mean, remember about 15 years ago, the logging company started taking all the hardwoods and everything that was on the ground, and they were taking it back for biogen. And now it's like, they're all like, well, it doesn't make any sense. It's just too expensive to do that, but a lot of that stuff, I mean, there's new concepts all the time. I encourage anybody that has an interest in a particular issue in Oregon to go watch those committee hearings. You'll be amazed. You, and I know Michaela's probably watched some too, but you'll be mad. Sometimes you might be happy, but you'll just go, I can't believe that this is actually happening in our state. But the fact is, it is happening in our state.
Can you just go on YouTube or what, Vanessa?
It's called OLIS, OLIS, Oregon Legislative Information System, .gov, OLIS.gov.
Do they list the committees on there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has all the scheduled hearings.
It is so confusing when you first get on there trying to figure where to find stuff.
The play button is like this little tiny arrow next to it. I mean, you almost, it took me a while. I kept starting the page and going back, and it's like, where's the play? How do I play this?
It'd be not handy to listen to stuff like online working.
Well, it's always available, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the hearings, once they're online, they're always there. So I don't know if you can download, I doubt it.
It needs to be logged into the website.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and it just gives you a lot of information on there. And
Yeah, it's good to be informed.
yeah. And there's also a list of bills that are being heard right now. Of course, there's nothing up, but you don't have to read through every bill. You can actually type in different, if there's a bill concerning transportation, you can type in the word transportation and pull up 50 bills that are, concerning transportation. But yeah.
And thank you for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm gonna get out of here and let you guys go back to work, and thank you for letting me bend your ears for a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave you this, because unless you want me to take it, I'll be happy.
No,
It's
you can't have it
encouraging.
if you want.
There's ridership information in there.
Yeah, well, so far I haven't had to take public transportation, but it doesn't mean I may not in the future. We'll see. I do a lot of Uber. Yeah,
Well, we'll invite you for the ribbon cutting when we get our electric buses.
I would love that. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all for having me. Thank Michaela for inviting me. Nice to meet you guys. Yeah. Take care. Yeah. See you later.
Regular chair.
Can we leave the door open? Yeah, can we open this one for our flow? Okay. Thank you.
Because I gotta put my sunglasses on because my eyes are not doing well with it.
The overhead lights.
Yeah. I can't, having some problems with my eyes. I have an appointment in the morning.
I need to go to the eye
Oh,
doctor.
you got in?
No, I have to go in and just sit and hopefully he has an opening. Something's going on. It's worse, I get these eye migraines that make me
Yes.
blind.
I was sitting here and having.
That's not
What do
good.
you get? Good news. Not that.
Yeah.
My aunt was just at the eye doctor today. I think she got good news.
Yeah.
She went to Eugene.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting him. That was
Yeah,
very,
great.
very informative. Good contact to have. Or
Alright. Go on to old business. Item number 8.1.
the updates to the language for the cash receipts portion of the fiscal policy. I made all of the updates to the page, and then I read through it again and realized that it completely omits accepting cash. So that is the primary way that we sell fares for our passengers. So I added accepting cash in there. So this is everything that we had previously discussed to change on the fiscal policy. And with those two words added in.
Looks good to me.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
Sarah made the motion, Mike seconds.
Yeah.
So one thing, make sure you update it to either 2023 or 2024.
So we adopted the policy in 2022. So unless we review the whole policy, it's only
So it's a
the,
larger policy.
yeah, only the cash receipts portion is
We need
revised.
further revised.
Yeah.
On there.
But I do list on the last page, the revisions that were made when we make them. Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion passes. Go on to new business. 9.1.
Okay, so in previous meetings, we had briefly discussed pursuing authorization to open a line of credit. So I started that conversation with Umpqua Bank. And this is solely for the purpose of utilizing the line of credit to be able to pay the vendor until we receive the reimbursement for the grant funds. And then those grant funds automatically would go to pay the line of credit off. So it's, and that is actually written into the proposal. Where it says. Well. Collateral, about a third of the way down on the first page there. Pledge of all grant fund or grant revenue reimbursement for projects. So that is part of the terms that we would utilize our reimbursements to pay off the credit. So when we started talking about this, the challenge was that all of our STIF funding at the beginning of each biennium, we had a STIF plan, and that STIF plan, it allocates all of the funding. So even though we had an amount of money in the bank, very little of it was money that we could use for whatever we wanted. It was all allocated for specific projects, and it stayed allocated to those projects until the following biennium, where it was either expended and we wrote a new plan with new projects, or some of it was not expended because we were not able to start all of the projects. And so it was reallocated mostly for the same projects. So we had a chunk of money in the bank, and then we had ordered vehicles, and we waited and waited and waited and waited. And while we were waiting for the vehicles to get here, the price of everything else increased. And so our cost of operations increased from the cost of fuel to the preventive maintenance costs, to just about everything went up. Some things went up more than others. The fuel and the preventive maintenance were huge, but even just the costs for having employees, our cost for insurance went up, those kinds of things. So we started allocating, we started cross-allocating with permission from ODOT, funds that were allocated for an operations project that we were not able to start yet because we didn't have the buses. And we utilized that to backfill where we were coming up short in the operations. But that is money that had just been sitting there waiting. And so that was, it was money in the bank, so to speak, and then we had 3 vehicles delivered, and we wrote a check for $223,000. And then we had 3 more vehicles, and it was what, $238,000, something like that. So we immediately went from having over $1 million in the bank to less than 500,000. And then the chargers were delivered for the electric buses, And there again, that's something that we need to pay up front, and then wait for the reimbursement. In addition, there were some challenges, with staffing at ODOT. So they were so understaffed that some of our regional transit coordinators were covering like 5 different jobs. So they are working through that issue. They've hired a lot of people, they're getting a lot of people trained. And so they're, catching up with some of the things that got behind. But some of the payments were delayed as a result as well. So things that we normally get at the first of the quarter, we got like a month later. So we actually got to a point where I informed ODOT that we had enough money in the bank to do 2 more payrolls. If we did not receive reimbursement or what is considered the entitlement funding that comes at the beginning of a quarter, we would not have had money to continue, which is the same scenario that Sunset Empire ended up in. Only I didn't have any thought that maybe we had some money in reserve. I knew what we had, I knew where we were, and I cannot tell you the level of angst that I was feeling as a result of it. But so that's where we started the conversation about the line of credit, because we have these 2 huge grants to be able to move forward and develop a property and have covered bus parking and build solar into it, so that will offset some of our electric costs, and build the preventive maintenance facility, which will bring our maintenance in-house and also eliminate or lower some of the costs. The electric buses, that portion of the grant is also, that's specific to those buses and the chargers. And that a portion of that goes to building the building for the buses to be housed in as well, because you want to house the electric separate from the rest. So this is a huge project that starts out with a contingency that gets paid to the project coordinator. And then there are construction companies involved, and just a lot of various different phases of a project where you're initially going to be paying money up front, and then you're going to be paying the balance at the end of whatever piece that is complete. So the line of credit allows us to be able to pay the required expenses up front without utilizing our operations funding to do that. And that's kind of where we were, where we have been, where we are right now. We've been using operations funds to cover the capital costs as we wait for the reimbursements. And some of those reimbursements are coming in now. So we're seeing that relief. But it is a spot that we don't want to continuously be in that position of having to use our operations funds for the capital. So when I started the conversation with Umpqua Bank, I had initially said $750,000, because that was what we were looking at right at the moment, which was 223, 228, and like 286, So that would have covered those 3 projects. And what they suggested is that it is easier to ask for a higher number and be approved for that up front than it is to ask for the lower number and then ask for an increase later. And so she highly recommended, after reviewing our account and our grants and just having a conversation about how our district started and where we are, what we're doing. Her recommendation was to ask for $1 million. And so that is what the proposal that is the term sheet is for. But this isn't a guarantee. The term sheet is just what they're going to present to underwriting if we pass the resolution that allows me to enter into the process of opening a line of credit. I've done the research and put this in front of us, but it requires the resolution, which it was drafted by Ron Sperry, our legal counsel. And
There's one area.
it's fine.
Board Chair Sarah Thompson.
Oh, that's an easy one to fix.
What would be like what would the interest accumulation be like?
So that would depend on what the terms end up being. But what we're talking about is typically a reimbursement is 4 to 6 weeks from the time that we take the.
So you have like a month where they pay the interest.
7.29%.
So this million is 17,900 for 1 month.
So this wouldn't really address the bus situation that you mentioned. This really just talks about the property. So this is just for the property.
It's but all capital projects. And so the bus situation will be resolved by the time that any of this is,
So
addressed.
when we do,
but it
so if
doesn't.
we were to pass the resolution 2304,
Mhm.
this resolution only pertains to the property.
It pertains to the 2 grants,
Yeah, right.
but the one is the 3 buses are on the low-no grant, the 35395.
Okay.
So those are the only 2 grants that I was asked to provide. Although I did provide her the list of capital grants that we had in process right now.
So my other part of the question is, so I guess the way I understand this is we're agree to this $1 million line of credit for capital purchases, but you'll bring different resolutions authorizing your ability to use that line of credit for different projects, because this only does certain ones. So we may have some ones in the future, well, a line of credit out there
Right.
that you may want to use for something else that makes sense to do, but we'll do that as a separate
It
action.
doesn't say that it's specific. It says operation, facility and improvements there too, as well as the cost of financing until funds become available to grant funding for said improvements. Capital
So,
improvement of the district's operations facility. That could be any facility that the district is responsible for. Are you saying it's not general enough, or are you saying it's too specific, or it's
I didn't read
not
it as,
specific enough?
well, I guess you were talking about the buses and stuff before, so, so it certainly doesn't.
No, the resolution.
It's
Yeah,
fairly-
it's right here, it's for the improvement of the district operations facility.
And improvements there too, talking really about that, so it doesn't really talk about the buses or anything that it doesn't have to do with the
By the
facility.
time she got this.
I know, but future, so again, we'll have $1 million line of credit, so I'm just asking for future stuff, so again, so let's say another bus purchase comes up. And you have 3 buses and you have some of that, and you want to use the $1 million line of credit. You would push through ask for another resolution. I'm just understanding the process. You would present another resolution to the board authorizing us to use it for that purpose.
if it were for anything other than costs associated with those 2 grants that
Right,
have been
right.
given.
You would
yes.
bring another resolution. That's all I'm
Yes.
asking, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and in order to be able to utilize the line of credit, I would have to present to the bank the reimbursement
The grant
request
and
the
and
grant
and
agreement
the
and
invoice for
Okay.
what we were,
Okay,
yeah. So they would require that as part of the documentation.
okay. Yeah, I have no problem with what we're proposing here. I just was
Yeah.
thinking about the future, if there's something that we're not seeing now, we're gonna have that line of credit.
Yes,
But
I
trying
would
to understand the
definitely
process.
have to bring any other capital expense that was not associated with those 2 grants to the board.
Yeah, and then the only thing it had was in section 1 and in section 3. Section 1 talks about the district board of directors, which is what we are. But in section 3, it says on behalf of the district without further action by the district council, which is not defined anywhere, and I assume that means the district board of directors.
I can,
So that
I
language.
saw that too. You
No,
said,
council would be like Ron.
Well, that would be, council is spelled like board, and council for legal counsel is CONUNCSEL, so.
okay,
Could be a typo.
And,
I
well,
will-
I don't think the council can could authorize it, so it'd have to be the board of directors
would be
to
the
do
board.
that, yeah.
yes.
So it says the board chair or the district general manager.
Yes.
Without
so-
further action by the district board, the council. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in the event that I
Yeah.
was not there,
Change it to board.
then
Or just
Sherry
take it
could
out and
bring
put it in this.
kind of like an invoice
Leave it
to
as
you
the
and say,
same.
you know, this just came in, but Cheryl's on that month-long vacation to Europe, you know?
What's that?
It's not.
Otherwise, you're on the hook.
Another question for you, Cheryl, every time we borrow against that, is that $3,500 fee, or is that just?
No,
the
that's the original
origination fee?
And it could be.
It's $7,000, I think is the way I read it. It's $3,500 for expenses and then another $3,500 for legal counsel.
Mhm.
So $7,000.
Plus
Is it-
the stuff.
Yeah, out of pockets.
Oh, up to 7,000.
How big
Yes.
are their pockets? How big is it?
Are we going to be able to incorporate that 7,000 plus the incorporate that into so again, future grant proposals. So would you incorporate that fee or any interest that you might pay into the grant request? Can you do that?
I don't think you can.
Or
I know you
so-
can't.
Potentially, it could cost us more
Yeah,
to use that.
yeah, how's that, do you have any concerns about the potential interest, any issues with that?
Well, I'm more concerned about not utilizing the money that we have in the bank and not being able to make payroll.
Yeah.
That's my gravest concern. Because,
Seems like we would want to though in our budgets, if we anticipate that we could use a
Right.
line of credit. Because we're
Right.
purchasing a bunch of vehicles or we're going for some other big grant
So
or
for this
something.
next budget.
we would
could
wanna budget
definitely
some-
Add that in there.
Some additional fees and interest.
absolutely,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes, soon as we're coming up on our budget cycle.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. That's it. I've already got it pulled up on my
Oh.
screen.
Jennifer, do you have concerns about this?
So we just took a class, the RTCs just took a class from RLS. And one of the things that they, and this is actually a class that they are going to teach, and it's available to board members and it's available to transit providers. I highly recommend it, December 13th and 14th. One of the things that they said that we need to look at is at red flags for agencies is